Good morning, everybody. We're back again today with Grant Kemp from CreativeCashFlow.com to continue the discussion we had last week discussing inbound phone calls from sellers. When you've got a seller that's calling you up looking to sell their property, how do we handle that phone call? And last week we focused in predominantly on how I was handling those phone calls, but Grant has a whole different system that we would like to discuss on today's show. And Grant's going to break down how he and his company operate inbound phone calls for the purpose of acquisitions. Grant, how are you doing today, man?
And I'm doing great. I'm glad to be out here. As anybody who's been around me for any period of time knows, like, negotiations are my favorite talking point. I think that nothing else matters more than knowing how to get to yes and knowing what goes behind that. And at that point in time, it's funny. My son isn't even 3 yet. He turns 3 in August, and like literally, I started talking to him about this probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, of just saying, like, in terms that a 3-year-old can understand, like, hey, Bubba, you need to understand, like, you gotta know what makes people want to do something and why they're going to listen to you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you're good at. If you're good at sales, you're going to be successful, right? And I think the same thing applies here in the way of lots of people, we get real wrapped up about what's going to be are you going to be a wholesaler? Are you going to be a fix and flipper? Are you going to be this or that? Doesn't really matter, right? If you know how to get the best price out of somebody, what is a price that makes sense to you and them, then you can be any of those. You can be anything you want, and you give yourself the opportunity to choose between them. So our phone conversations are based around that. I want you guys to be thinking about these things in full understanding of, you got a lot of different options, and you should know how to kind of knock your way into one option or the next. So before we hop into my side, Daniel, can you do a quick recap of maybe 2 to 3 major points of how you view like the phases of your call that we went over last week? If there's some key takeaways that just to kind of recover for everybody, and then we're going to jump into my call and talk about how it goes as Daniel pulls pieces out of it that are going to matter.
I appreciate that. So last week we basically went through, in my opinion, 3 phases of a phone call. You're going to have your introductory exploratory phase, where you're essentially just going in and kind of getting the basic information about the person, the property, and you're using that time for some due diligence. And then going from there, really trying to key in on the motivation, finding out, okay, is this person somebody I need to be spending time with, or is this person really just kicking tires? And then from there, I kind of have a split in the phone call. I either go towards really pushing to find a little bit more about what the seller's wanting and trying to get an appointment and or a contract, or if the seller's looking for full retail value, not interested in any sort of creative terms, then I try to end the phone call quick. But if I do have a person that is looking to move forward and sell at a reasonable price that makes room for everyone to be, a win-win scenario, I'll stay on that phone call a little bit longer. And my key goal from that point moving forward is either to get the contract or to get the appointment. I personally did not contract a whole lot over the phone. I think maybe in my entire life I've contracted 1, maybe 2 properties over the phone. So that's not something I did a whole lot of. I was always an in-person appointment kind of guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I quite pulled that off for you, but that better?
No, that's exactly what I would like to see from that. So, the side of just the philosophy of the call, right? And I'm glad that you pointed out the things that you did, because you got to know what you're shooting for. I think too many people go into something not really paying great attention to where their compass is set. And what I want to point out to you is that a seller is ready to talk, right? They are nervous. This is a new situation to them. You're the one that has the experience, and so you should be leading this conversation. I think that's one of the big takeaways that I took from your talk last time was, you mentioned like the control aspect, like you control the conversation, and I want you guys to control the conversation as well. When we start on this, I want to address a question that got brought up last week about like, hey, can we go back over the head, heart, and gut thing real quick? Because I know that folks are somewhat, oh shoot, I was going to hope that I could. We're going to be referencing that. We're going to be referencing the head, heart, gut thing. And so let's quickly recap head, heart, gut, because this is going to be something that will significantly impact your ability to close. And you'll have to bear with me real quick, because I'm going to hit on this slide. I'm going to go over here. I have to change one thing for it to allow me to do what I want to do real quick. Okay, great.
So this
was a photo that I took while I was waking up the other day. My wife took it of me, and so I was like, this will be a good photo to use for the head, heart, gut thing. So the head, heart, gut, right? Everybody makes decisions based out of one of these three decision centers, and everybody is going to probably, that's a dumb way to say this. You're going to have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary decision center. All right. So what that means is primarily you make your decisions with your head, but you're also going to listen to your gut, or primarily you make decisions with your heart, but you're also going to listen to your head, whatever that might be. I think that this is hands down the best quote unquote personality test. You know, everybody gets super wrapped up in like the personality test and this and that and the other. And I'm not a huge personality test guy for the most part, because I don't care how the seller responds in leadership roles where they're not familiar with what's going on. I don't care how the seller communicates. And like, all these personality tests are built to give you this great insight of a vast overlook of a human. We need to know how somebody makes decisions, and we need to speak the language that makes sense to them. And that comes down to decision-making centers, which are your head, your heart, and your gut. So a head person needs all the details. Okay. You can never give a head person too much information or details. They are going to just eat up numbers for you. They're going to work based off of logic. Does this make sense for their situation? Logically, is 1 + 1 2 for them always. Like I said, they love the numbers and they want the bottom line. They don't want to waste time. You're going to see a lot of these folks that as you're answering their questions or whatever that might be, like they just want to skip forward and make sure that they understand like what's going on. They might pull it back constantly to those numbers. So what is a head person going to say? These are going to be things that we're going to need to look out for in these conversations, because they will dictate some of the forks in the road that we may take. Head persons or head people are going to steer the conversation back to the numbers over and over and over again. As you try to pull it away, they're going to say, yeah, but what are you buying it for? Yeah, but this house over there sold for this. Yeah, but I could get that price done for this. Or yeah, but. And everything is based around pricing, dollar amounts, numbers, days on market, you know what I mean? Like any number, regardless if it's $1 or a day or whatever it is, that's going to be what they're super interested in. They get quickly disinterested when you're using emotional language, stuff where you start talking about like, yeah, if you sell to me, think about what this is going to do for your family. They don't care about that. What they care about is getting a good return for their property or whatever is going on. And they get quickly disinterested, kind of tune out when you start talking about anything that has to do with emotional language. And surprisingly enough, I need to think this over, actually isn't a big head person thing. We'll go into who that actually applies to here in a second. Because you think, hey, I need to think this over. Think is a head thing. It's not. Heart people make emotional decisions. Heart people need to like you. Okay, that's what I mean by rapport, right?
Pause. Give me just a second. I want to ask you a little bit more about the head people. So, like, how
Please.
would I associate that with most people? Like, would it be fair to say that, like, when we're talking about generalities, that these are typically like the engineer type of people, the data science type of people, the people that are just really into the details that we would typically associate with those type of people?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, your head people are going to be. So Daniel, you can probably name this, like, of our typical like lead sources, right? You think about kind of what would you name as like the main lead sources? What are the maybe top 3 or 4 lead lists that you might think that people are using or marketing to?
So for me personally, I liked vacant properties. I like going after pre-foreclosures, probates. And those were the 3 that I was hitting really heavily through different resources, different list types. There's probably about 6 different lists I'd pull for those 3 different motivators, but those are the ones I was targeting predominantly.
And that's what I would have guessed would be the answer to, right? And so let me ask you this: in your in that top 3 list, who do you think is most likely to be a head person that you're going to be dealing with as a lead?
it varies, but I would lean towards possibly executors of an estate. But I mean,
Boom.
that's
Daniel, I love working with you. I love how you always get the answer that I'm looking for, no matter how vague I'm asking the
I had to
question.
pull that out of a hat because I mean, there's everybody going into foreclosure, everybody goes into vacant properties, but typically an
Yep.
executor is somebody that has been chosen to handle an estate, and I would imagine that most people that are choosing someone to handle an estate are somebody that they're looking for that's detailed and process oriented.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. And so the question being, hey, how do we apply this to like everyday knowledge? Like, who's the everyday most common person we're going to run into in that? That would be my answer. Is like most commonly your head sellers are going to be your probate executors or executrixes, because when somebody is facing mortality, who are they going to appoint as the person to handle their estate? Are they going to appoint their sister that they know is going to be a sobbing and bawling wreck the entire time? Or are they going to appoint their sister that they know like thinks of everything very pragmatically and is going to be able to put their emotions away for a minute and make a good decision that's best for their estate, right? So when you start thinking about like who a head person is, that's who it is. It's somebody who's less concerned about the visualizations, less concerned about the taking care of the people aspect or the house or whatever that might be, and is more concerned with, hey, I know that this house up the street sold for X, and therefore I want to get near X for my house, right? Like that's where we're going to see the head person present most commonly. Does that answer what you were asking?
Yeah, I was just trying to put that into context because like I hear you talking about head, heart, and gut, but like a head person in my mind just keeps pointing back to like the engineers, the typical engineer thought process that I would anticipate, getting out of an engineer. So if that makes
Yeah.
any correlation,
Yeah.
and that's fair to say, then I'd like to bring that up. So you were talking about the heart people
Exactly
now?
right. So heart people are going to be people that make emotional decisions. And this is where I think that Daniel's quote is one of the most brilliant quotes. I use this all the time, and maybe somebody else came up with it, but I'm attributing it to Daniel, which is rapport buys more houses than money ever has. Okay. That saying is going to be particularly true when it comes to heart people. Heart people need to like you, and they're going to, if they feel like you're the person who's taking care of them, then you're going to be the person that gets the contract. And that's what they're really looking for is they want to be taken care of. They want their property to be taken care of. They need to like you and feel like you're the right person to work with. Visualization is huge for a heart person. You've got to paint a picture of what their life will look like by selling to you. So here's a phrase that I've used on the phone for heart people that I think will be very good for you. Which is saying like, look, we're going to get this taken care of for you today. We're going to get this contract done so that, look, I can't fix that problem or that problem or that problem, whatever it is that they've told you. But what I can fix is this problem right here of this house. And I'm going to come in here and take care of this house. I'm going to take care of this situation so that tomorrow morning, when you wake up and you yawn and you stretch out for that first time, yeah, you might get hit with a million other problems. But you know what's going to feel really good is you're going to be able to say, I took care of this one with my house. It's done. Grant came out and got it contracted yesterday. We're finished. That is a visualization that we are implanting into a heart person's head to help them understand what their life is going to look like by selling to you, right? And lastly, they love to imagine the house as animate. Heart people really like objects to be animate things, right? So saying a phrase along the lines of, hey, this house is perfectly fine to live in. Obviously, you've been living here, but she needs some love, and that's what I do. And so when you sell to me, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to make it beautiful and give her the shining new flooring and new paints and make this as beautiful as it has ever been so that a new family can buy this property and create all the same memories in it that you've gotten the chance to create over this last 30 or so years. So let me talk about things heart people say. Let me pass it to Daniel if he wants to pull anything out there. Then we're going to talk about we're going to talk about the gut people. We'll pass it to Daniel, see what he has to say on that. And then what I want to do is I want to give you guys a quick test so that you can test yourself on who you are. All right. And then we're going to go into my 3 phases of the phone call and build those things out because they're very based off of this type of stuff. So things that heart people are saying, they're going to talk about memories in the home. Okay. They're going to talk about some sort of good memories that they've had in that property. Head people don't really care about the memories. They care about what's happening now and in the future. Heart people are very sentimental. They care about the past, right? They've probably mentioned their family several times. And I say probably, they will have mentioned their family. Heart people are going to be moving in with their sister, or their brother was living with them, or, they love their mommy so much and she blah, 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 blah. Heart people are going to talk about family. I really need to think this over is actually a heart person phrase usually, because What they're saying is not, I need to think this over. What they're saying is, I need time to feel good with working with you. Okay. A head person doesn't need to think things over. How long do you have to think about what 1 + 1 is, right? If you're thinking logically and you're just thinking about numbers, you don't need time to run that over. What a heart person needs is to be able to sleep on it, some time to think over it, because they need to get their heart comfortable with moving forward with this process. And knowing that, we're going to talk a little bit, as I talk about the phone call, of my roller coaster of negotiations, is what I refer to it as. Knowing that we have to prep them as early as we can to get emotionally ready to imagine working with you and selling their house to you, so that they're not asked to take too big of a step, a leap from point 1 to point 2 whenever it's time to contract that house. So Daniel, what do you want? Is there anything that you want to point out on that particular section?
No, I mean, I think that fairly well covers it. I mean, overall,
Cool.
I think those are the seller types that I personally work best with. There's obviously 3 different types, and the better you are at understanding all 3 and working with all 3, the better you'll do. But I've always historically performed far better with heart people than head people. Yeah. And that's probably why I say rapport buys more houses, because that's been my best approach.
That's a great observation. All right, gut people, let's finish up here. Gut people make quick decisions. They need to feel like they like you. It's a small difference, right? The heart people need to like you. The gut people need to feel like they like you. They need enough information to feel like you're the right person to move forward with, and they're going to move forward with you. The first impression is huge with them. Obviously, first impressions always matter, but especially with gut people. And gut people will reach that Leroy Jenkins moment. The hard thing about gut people is that they're going to present themselves as head or heart, okay? Gut people are going to ask questions that would lead you to think that they want to know what the numbers are, or that they want to know emotional family stories. But gut people are very ADD typically, and they kind of lose interest. The example that I like to bring up with this is, how many of you have faced a situation where you are asked a question and you're like 10 to 15% into the answer. You haven't even gotten a chance to answer the question yet, and your seller changes the subject, and then you spend the next like 30 minutes trying desperately to figure out how you're going to steer the conversation back to answering what they wanted, because like you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even answer it, and they asked the question, but clearly they need to know the answer, but they're not waiting on me. The thing is, gut people don't care what the answer is. They care that there's an answer. It's a very big distinction that's with a very small word, right? They don't care what the answer is. They care that there's an answer. They don't care what your answer is. They care that you can answer it. So as you show them your confidence that, yeah, I've got the answer to that, and you start bleeding into it, they don't care really what comes out of that. You have satisfied their gut because you have shown them, oh, okay, this person knows the answer to that. I don't need to know it. That's a waste of my time, so we'll just move on with it, right? I think that's a huge distinction for gut people. Gut people are going to change the subject a lot, right? Like I said, they're very ADD about things. Gut people start off interested in their numbers, but they're going to quickly glaze over, right? You just kind of see that you've lost them as you're talking about it. They're interested that you can appeal to the heart, but they lose interest in your stories. And typically they're kind of the life of the party, outgoing, friendly, confident, social butterfly types, which is a little bit easier to call them out. So real quickly, before we go into my phases of the phone call, like I said, that was something that got brought up a couple of times last week, that people wanted a recap of head, heart, gut. So I wanted to spend some time on that. Lisa Martinez says, thank you. This stuff is gold. And we got a 100 emoji. Or wait, no. Maybe the applause is inappropriate for a 100. I think for a 100, we got to go DJ Horn, right? Don't give Grant toys. So here's the example I want you guys to think about, because here's the thing is, as you are negotiating and you are going down this phone call, you are going to want to default to whatever your decision center is. And your decision center has a 66% chance of being wrong because it's one of 3. So you need to make sure that you are respecting your seller enough to understand how they think about the world and how they make decisions, and you speak their language. I think it's very disrespectful in a negotiation to say, no, I'm not going to say a pitch in a way that I think is dumb, because I think that's dumb. I'm going to say it. You need to know what the numbers are. You need it because what that's saying in effect is my way of thinking about decisions is better than your way of thinking about decisions. And you should be thinking about this decision in my way, right? So think about this. Last time you bought a vehicle, was it that you spent 2, 3, 4 weeks looking at numbers, researching the cost of the vehicle's lifespan, all that kind of stuff, gas mileage, interior cubic square feet, colors, found a dealership that had the car that you wanted with the interest rate that you wanted, and then you went and bought it? That would be a head person. If you're a heart person, you either hated or loved your last car. Okay. It was not it's a car. You hated it, or you really loved it and you hated to see that you had to trade it in, but it was just time. And you have to test drive your car. You had to test drive it. And the car you ended up buying was the car that just felt right. Your butt sat down just right. The steering wheel was just the right width. Like it felt great with the wind in your head. That's the one you went with. You're a heart person. Gut people are typically, man, I got paid and I hadn't thought about buying a new car, but you know what? I got paid. It's time for a new car. I want a truck. Let's go see. And you kind of whimsically, you look, it's a nice day. You go outside, you go buy, you go to the dealership, you go to the dealership and you did your deal because that dealer was just like you and him clicked, you and her clicked, right? Like they just had it. And eventually you were just like, all right, so what is this? And they're like, look, we can get this to you for 31. And you're like, all right, let's do this thing, right? Like that's a gut person, right? Just making kind of let's do these things. I'd like to see y'all's comments on who you are. Are you a head person, a heart person, or a gut person? You're going to have a primary decision center and a secondary decision center and a tertiary decision center. In my case, I'm head and gut. You have to feed my numbers. And once I have enough numbers, then my gut's like, all right, screw it. Let's do this thing, right? Daniel's pretty well evenly spread, but you need to know that about yourself. All right. So now I want to dive into the actual stages of a call. But I do want to give an opportunity, Daniel, if you think that there's anything that we should pull out from that section before moving on. And you guys that are watching, both YouTube, Facebook, drop the comments. Ika is here helping us out, pulling these comments out, asking questions. So ask questions. She'll put it in front of us, and we would love to answer those things. Daniel, is there anything you wanted to cover on that?
I think the thing that I like the most, and I think that people should take away from this, is while all of that information is amazingly great, the head, heart, gut aspect of it, I think the key thing that people should really focus in on is the simple fact that this is so beneficial to the seller because you're communicating to them the way they need to be communicated to. And if you realize that it is important for you to speak in such a way that the sellers can truly understand you, then you are doing them a favor as well as you a favor because you're going to speak in a way that allows them to make a decision. If you don't take the time to understand these three simple things that Grant has explained, then when you're speaking to a seller and they're a head person and you're speaking to them like they're a heart person, well, that deal's just not going to work for you. And you may have even seen that happen in your previous conversations where the deal just wasn't happening. You couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, maybe you can take what's going on here and kind of apply it to these previous conversations you've had and start realizing how you could have tailored your conversations differently to obtain a better rapport with the seller and allow that seller to come to a decision easier because you're speaking to them in the way they need to be spoken to. And I think that's a really important takeaway from this first segment.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I always like to say, it's like here, I'll give this example. Typically people are head people that are watching these types of things, and that pitch where I was like, look, this property's been really good to you over the many years, but it's time to move on. It's time for her to get the nice, spick and span new floors and new paint and be shiny, so a new family can buy the house and have just as many great memories in it as you did. Like that's a barf moment for a head person. Right? That's not going to be beneficial to a head person. But if you're talking to a heart person, that's what they need to know to feel good about moving forward with this. Therefore, like I said before, it is disrespectful to them to not speak their language, right? So as we are in our phone call, we need to be discovering who this person is, right? What are they about? What makes them tick? What is going to be their motivating factor? So we kind of split our calls up into 3 different stages. You've got kind of a setting the stage 1, a setting the stage 2, your transition and negotiation. And you need to have your destination points clearly mapped out for yourself. But that setting the stage 1 is all discovery. Right? It's all figuring out, why is this person looking to sell? What is their what is their reasoning behind this, their motivation behind this, right? So I'm going to pull over into the document that we use to train our folks on the phones, on sales. We do 100% of our properties right now are purchased over the phone, and right now we're doing several properties a week. And we purchase over the phone. We go with our boots on the ground. If we need to, we renegotiate. But it's all about getting a contract on the property before you waste a lot of time with your due diligence. And I think that that's a super important thing to remember, is that you should not get this lead in and say, okay, this is a lead. Let me go research the demographics of the neighborhood. Let me go research the market data. Let me go research this and that and the other. And if I like all of that, then I will get it under contract. Because in the time that you took that due diligence, somebody like us got a phone call and we got a contract, right? And it wasted your time. When you call them back and you finally 2 days later are like, you know what, I looked at everything. I'm ready to move on this. I want to do this thing. They've already sold it to somebody else. So you've got to be ready to move. You've got to be ready to have action. And I think that's the first biggest takeaway here, is that your point of every conversation with the seller is to get a signed contract. That's the point. That's what everything needs to point towards. And if you are doing actions that do not point towards that end result, then you're not taking a proper phone call. So in our first stage, I'm going to pull this up, and we rely heavily. We send all of our salespeople, even though obviously I train on sales, we still think it's a good idea to get multiple resources underneath your belt. One of the resources that we use is John Martinez's sales training. We send everybody through the John Martinez sales training, right? And a lot of this is based heavily on that, but we find that it works, and we've put our paces into it. So you can see here, this is kind of how we script buying over the phone. We've got setting the stage, part one, right? And so here's where we start off giving them power, right? We want to start off giving them the opportunity to be in control. Typically, people who contact us want to know what we do, how we do it, how much we can offer for their house, those kinds of things. Do you have some of those same type of questions? And you pause for it and you let them dictate. Yes, I do have some of those same type of questions, because now that opens the door for the communication back and forth, right? Okay, good. Besides that, is there anything else that you're hoping to ask while you have me on the phone, right? If you can get some initial ideas, because they may have some stuff in the back of their mind that they really want to get solved. I think one of the problems that a lot of us make in the investment world when we're on this phone call is we want to dive right in and we want to tell them what we do, who we are, what we're about, all that kind of stuff. And we don't give them the chance to talk and have control. So imagine you're a seller and you're in a tough situation and you're looking to sell, and you've got some questions. You've got questions about like, well, I'll call these guys, but I just don't know if they're going to give me a fair offer. I don't know if this, I don't know if that, whatever. And you call somebody and they just dive right into all this stuff. And it's 15 minutes before you get a chance to ask your questions. There's a good chance that person, your seller, feels like they're never going to get a chance to ask their questions. It may be frustrating for them and they may not have a positive experience working with you. But if you can pull those initial questions out immediately, right at the beginning of the conversation, write them down next to you on your little notepad, they know that even if you're getting distracted and pushing on to something else, you're going to come back around and you're going to address the questions that they already had. You just want to kind of steer the conversation and make sure that certain things are done. But yeah, we hear you. We understand what it is that you're looking for, and we will get to those things, right? So I think that's a really good starting point for that conversation. Asking, right? Asking, okay, do you have 5 minutes so I can ask some questions? After that, we can decide whether or not it makes sense to take the next step. Getting the contact information. This was something that Daniel did as well, right? We just make sure that we get a good contact information, because they may be calling us from a bad phone. We want to make sure that they are giving us that information. And also, Shirley, just from and I can't remember the act, but the canned spam stuff. From that standpoint, if somebody calls you, you can text them, you can call them and all that kind of stuff. But this is kind of like a double opt-in, right? They are freely giving you the information. They're allowing you to give marketing calls to them. So we've set the stage here. We've asked them, we've made them feel comfortable. They have a chance to tell us their questions. We kind of outline, hey, this is how this phone call is going to go. I know that you want to know these things. What do I not know that you want to know? Okay, do you have some time for us to go over these things right now? Sweet, that's awesome. Once we go over it, we'll be able to figure out if this is a good move for us to move forward. Before we jump into this, let me go ahead and get your contact information in case we get disconnected or whatever that is. Get some quick house cleaning or housekeeping out of the way. And that's the first part of our phone call. Daniel, is there anything that you want to pull out of that?
As of right now, I think that we've been pretty close and similar in our style, but you did change it up a little bit on the front side in regards to how direct you got with trying to unveil their questions and do that quickly. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I'd probably start adapting and working into my own style as well.
Sure. And I want to also be clear. We talked about this last week. Daniel buys houses differently than I do. I buy houses differently than my partner does. My partner and I buy houses differently than our lead sales guy does, and differently than our junior salesperson does, right? Like, we're all going to buy houses differently. This script that we have built right here is based on a script that we have kind of factored out to try to hit best for most of our salespeople. It's kind of a blueprint for us, and that's why I'm going through this side of things with you. Other questions that I want you to ask very early on, okay, is why are you looking to sell? I think that's the most important question that you can possibly ask, and you need to be doing that question before you get into like necessarily their motivators and that kind of stuff, because a lot of times they don't give you everything right there. They'll talk more surface level when you do it right at the beginning, but it gives you a good idea of what it is that they're facing and why they feel like they need to sell. And I want you to follow that question up with my next favorite question, which is, are you willing to sell for what you owe? Okay. Now, two things are going to happen from that question. One is they say, yeah, if I could get what I owed on this, I'd be good to go and I'd move out. Well, guess what, guys? You just saved yourself the next 30 minutes or however long it was going to take with discovery, because it no longer matters. None of that matters. If they're ready to close and they're ready or willing to sell for what they owe, they are giving you the best deal they could give you, right? Assuming that we're not having them bring cash to closing, which, you know, I've never done that with somebody. I know some guys who have had sellers bring cash to closing so that they're, you know, look, I can buy this for 70, you owe 80. If you can bring 10 to the table, we'll do this deal, and people do it, right? That's definitely on the table. But if somebody's willing to sell for what they owe, that's a sub-2 deal. Okay. If they're willing to sell for what they owe, if they say yes, you're ready to contract that puppy sub-2. So you're just going to change course immediately. You're going to skip all of these other stages and you're going to move straight into the contracting phase. And you're going to be like, oh, well, look, here's the thing. If you're willing to sell for what you owe, what that tells me is that you are giving me the best deal that you can possibly give me. And I'm not here to beat you up over price. I'm not here to just completely dog this thing out and make sure that. So if you're giving me the best deal, I can ask for better than that. Here's what I can do to buy your house. What do you owe on your property? Right? And just ask them, okay, and how long have you had that mortgage? What's the interest rate on it? I think the direct questioning and the confidence in which you are asking these questions is one of the most significantly important parts of this phone call. Because what you need to be doing, and we talked about this last week, is you need to be presenting yourself as the expert that you are. You're the person who knows what's going on here. You shouldn't be completely expecting them to steer this conversation, because they've never sold a house like this before, most likely. This might be the only property they've ever purchased, whereas you ideally, hopefully, have done several. At the very least, you've talked to people who have done several. So you kind of know what's going on. It's your job to steer this conversation. So when you ask questions, there's two different ways you can ask it. The example that I use is, you know, a young kid comes running through the living room and trips and falls and kind of gets some carpet burn on their knee. And every adult jumps up and is like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, the kid's going to start bawling. But if every adult is like, you're fine, get up, and they just keep talking, like, the kid might sniffle a little bit and rub their knee, but they're going to get up and keep running, because the adults are dictating how the emotional responses should be had on that conversation. And in this analogy, you're the adult. You've been through this situation before. That child is trusting the adults, that the adults have seen the situation and they know the kid is going to be okay. And so the kid says, hey, this hurts, but like, that adult, I think, has seen this before and is saying, I'm okay, so I must be okay. And they get up and run off. Similarly here, if you ask a question like this and you're like, okay, so I can buy your house for what you owe, but it's gonna require you telling me some personal information about this. I get it if you're not comfortable with that, but like, are you comfortable with telling me what you owe on this house? What do you think the chances are that they're actually going to tell you?
For me,
on the flip side,
sorry,
go ahead.
For me personally, like, a direct question like that typically responds with a rebuttal, like they don't want to disclose that type of information. That's something that I typically have to work toward by building confidence.
Yeah. And, you know, they, Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. When you run into those situations where you're like, typically this is what I'm getting, and you hear from somebody else or from multiple people particularly, hey man, this thing is working for me. There, this goes really deep, right? It's turtles all the way down. Like you got to analyze your analysis so many times. This is one of the big benefits to being in like a close social group with other actual players. I cannot stress to you guys enough how important it is to be around other people whom you trust, right? That you're not just taking Facebook facts at Facebook fact value, that you've got somebody who will tell you how they suck and how they're good and like tell you what they're struggling with and what they're doing well at, that you can actually trust these things. Because here's the problem is that most of the Facebook facts that you see, I shouldn't say most, a very large portion of those are people that like have found something that sounds good, but may not actually work practically, right? So you need to be in a situation where you can trust whatever's being told to you is something that's actually truth, right? So we're going to work off of the assumption that we've already built that trust between us, that I've told you enough about this business, that you've seen enough evidence of what I do, that you can trust that when I say, nah, man, this is what I do and this is how I get past it, that's the truth. And it's not something that's going to sound good that I've just come up with. And in reality, it doesn't work, right? If you are in that situation where you trust the person who's telling you what's going on and you are getting different results, then that means that there is a different sort of data feed that is happening from you that is not happening from person A, okay? This manifested itself for Daniel and the, hey, I got rebuttal of people not wanting to tell me that information. I used to get that too. It manifested in me with due on sale clause. I could never get past due on sale clause. I was constantly getting, people didn't want to move forward because of due on sale clause. But I was close with a guy named Sean McQuistion, who has done hundreds or thousands of these sub-2 deals. And I sat with him, I'm like, dude, how are you getting past due on sale? Nobody wants to move forward. And he gave me the most sage advice I've ever gotten probably in real estate, which is, Grant, if you find that sellers are consistently saying no for the same reason, it's probably not a problem that they have with it. It's probably a problem that you have with it. And I think that is a quote for you to tattoo on, on the inside of your shirt, let's say. Let's not make it permanent, but put that for you to constantly have, because it's so true. I went back, I analyzed, and yeah, absolutely, I was pitching it wrong, right? So on this kind of situation, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If you've got to be just super confident, very passingly asking them, and if you have shown them that you understand how things go, right? We already outlined, hey, this is how this call is going to go. This is about how long I think it's going to take to do this thing. Do you have any questions so I can make sure that we fit this in our schedule, because we want to be respectful to your time as well as ours? We're showing them that we're professionals that know why we're asking certain questions, because we've gone down this road enough times before. So when we then ask hard questions that a lot of people may have trouble answering to somebody that they don't yet trust with that information, this is where that pays dividends, right? Because if we go in, and I'll tell you right now, I have not had anybody since maybe my first or second year in the business be hesitant to give me that information. And as a matter of fact, I've had people send me literally pictures of their ID from the first phone call so that I can put stuff together on, like they're giving me their picture of their ID. They're also giving me their social security number, and they're giving me their account numbers to their banks so that I can put my contracts together properly and prepare them for them to sign after one phone call, after talking to these guys for 20 or 30 minutes, because I presented myself with confidence, with a calm confidence. And I've matched their communication style. I've shown them, hey, I respect you enough to understand how you want to hear things, and therefore I'm going to present them in such a way. But we never get rid of the foundation of this, which is I'm an authority. I know how this is going. And in order for me to make my decision, I'm going to need this bit of information. And if you're not willing to give me that information, that's fine. But I'm not going to be able to give you what you want unless I get what I need. So again, it goes back to, so what do you owe on the house? And you ask, okay. If you have trouble getting answers from them, if they are giving you the rebuttal, here's a real quick transition for you before you can get confident enough to just outright and ask. A great way to transition that I actually learned from Anthony Bourdain, which is the best way to learn somebody's recipe is to guess wrong. So I'll guess wrong sometimes, right? If we get the feeling that they're going to be a little bit hesitant, you mean, okay, so how much do you owe on this? Okay, you owe 80. What's that at? Like a 5% interest rate? And they're going to be like, well, actually, I got it at 4. Or, well, actually, I got it at whatever, right? So it's you guess wrong, and they'll want to feed you back with the correct information. And so you can get that. And this gives you a picture of what you need to know. So we're going again based off of, yes, I'm willing to sell for what I owe. Now that means you just move to contracting. You got to get all the information that you need. What do they owe? What's the interest rate? When did they get their mortgage? explain to them what the due on sale clause is, and let them know, hey, I'm going to go draft up these contracts for us. And here's a real key factor, right? The challenge that I think all of us have faced with trying to contract over the phone is getting somebody to actually respond to the stinking DocuSign document or right signature or whatever, right? Daniel, did you ever try to get people to sign like with DocuSign from a phone call?
Like I said, I've only done
or,
that like
or it was all in person for you?
Almost everything I did was in person. I was in a different environment. I was heavy on the wholesale side, 2012 to 17,
Sure.
17, 18. So the need for the virtual wasn't really there at the time. There was plenty enough.
And the technology wasn't really there, frankly. I didn't buy virtually until last year. Last year was when we started really taking seriously the remote side of things. But the beautiful thing that we have unlocked for how to get this done is anybody who's tried to sign DocuSign or something like that understands that one of the woes of doing that is you send it to them and then it just sits in their inbox and they never see it. So I go into more details in our as higher end groups, we get into like detail. But the point of it is you tell them like, okay, so I'm going to go draft this up. When can you be near a computer in your email? When's the next time you're going to be able to be in front of a computer? And get them to commit. Okay, I'll be in front of a computer at 5. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this all ready, and then I'll call you back at 5. So save this number off in your phone because I'm going to be calling you at 5, and call them at 5. I will literally sit there staring at the dial pad on my phone at 4:59, and when it hits 5, I hit ring. Because I feel like there's an impression that gets given when you say, I'm going to call at 5, and you call at 5, and when you call, they look over at the clock, and they're like, wow, this dude is like to the minute. Again, we are subtly showing them there. You can show and you can tell that you're a professional. Let's show them that you're a professional, right? So call them on the dot, on the minute that you say that you're going to call them. And then say, hey, I'm calling you back. You said you're going to be around your computer at 5. Are you around your computer? And they say, yes. Okay, go ahead and open up your email. They open up your email. Do you see an email from me, from DocuSign for this contract? And they say no, because you haven't sent it yet. And then you say, okay, well, check your spam folder, right? And they check it. No, it's not there because you haven't sent it yet. You say, okay, all right, good. So I'm glad you're in front of your email. Let me do this. I'm sitting in front of it right now. I'm going to hit the send button right now, and it'll show up in your email within the next minute or two, right? And then you just kind of rapport with them for a minute while the email comes in. Have a quick conversation and then say, okay, did the email show up yet? And if they say no, instruct them how to refresh their inbox, right? There's always that little mail looking icon you can push and it'll refresh and it'll typically be there. And then you walk them through the contract on the phone. And one of the things that I like telling, I really want you guys to encourage your sellers to read the contract, okay? It becomes very difficult. I used to in person, what I would do is I would kind of do like a car salesman, right? I'd show them that. I'd say, hey, I want you to read the contract, super stress that over, and then say, now, I understand not everybody wants to read the contract. I read every word of every document I sign. I don't expect everybody to want to do that. So what I will do is I will point out the high points that most people care about. And if you want to stop and read something, please stop and read something. I cannot encourage you to do that enough. You're signing a real contract. So let's make sure that you understand it. But I'll go through this. And if you have questions, ask me then. So we would go through point by point and we would explain what everything was. Ironically, the more you encourage questions, the fewer questions that you get, because if you are giving them the open space to have that questioning power, it takes away that veil of maybe this guy is trying to get one over on me, right? They become less and less suspicious, so they don't feel like they have to come up with a question. They just truly ask you the questions that they actually have. Whereas if you're like trying to blow past stuff, they're like, whoa, I need to figure out something to ask this guy to figure out what's going on, right? So you kind of get more and more because they're not comfortable with you yet. So we encourage those questions. So what we do on the virtual, on the remote side to get it contracted over the phone is exactly what I just said, which by the way is a golden nugget. If we still had our golden nugget meteor showers, that would have happened there because that is a huge problem in the industry that we have unlocked. Now we'll have them open it. And again, encourage them. Look, you're going to have questions. There's lots of words in here. What I can do is I can go through the high points and kind of tell you what each point talks about. And if you want to read through it, I actually really encourage you to just read through it. I've got a headset in. It's no big deal to me. I can sit here in silence and work on my computer and just be ready for you to answer or ask questions because we care that much about you knowing what's going on. But otherwise, what we'll do is I'll just kind of go through and I'll point out the number because our contracts are all numbered, right? Say, okay, look at number 2. You see where it says the the option period or whatever, like this means that we've got 90 days and blah, 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 blah. And you explain it to them, telling them what number it is and what that paragraph means, and roll through. We answer all their questions and then tell them, okay, now hit the button right there that says accept and sign. It's going to ask you to type your name. It'll give you like a little digital signature from there. And then we are off to the races and you're good. You get to wipe your hands. I'm going to send out, and then you introduce what the next stages of this acquisition process are. Daniel, anything you want to pull out of that section?
Sorry about that. I was kind of over there on social media trying to handle stuff from over there, but overall...
Oh, sure. Sorry.
My apologies on that side. But overall, your process is significantly different than mine. And I am appreciating you going through how, because I know that personally, one of the things that I have had issues with in the past is emailing somebody the documents and it being a long time before it comes back. So you going through step by step how you're overcoming that, I think is very much appreciated.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's good. We're getting good feedback. John Jackson, glad you're watching, man. He says the best way to someone's recipe is to guess wrong. Anthony Bourdain, wow, that was awesome, Grant. Love it. Eric, you guys rock. Thank you. We got the diamond emojis from Robin, and Steve is saying great stuff. I do want to give a quick shout out and thanks to Abimbala and We Buy Houses Dallas, Ace Ham, Corey for sharing these streams, because again, this is information that's going to help people close, and we want to make sure that we are helping people close on properties, because this changes lives for real. So we've gone stage one. We've taken the situation where they said that they're willing to sell for what they owe. I don't care about anything else right now. What I care about is getting a contract, and that's what I just walked you through, okay? So we skipped forward to the contracting stage, because what we're gonna tell them is, look, as long as everything is like, is in okay shape, you can't give me a better offer than what you've given me here. And that may be high for the neighborhood. Fortunately, I know how to work these things out, so it should be okay. I'm just going to need to get out there and get some pictures taken to really make sure that everything's fine. But we should be good on this. Let's contract it first, and then I'll start doing all of my due diligence on it. Because again, don't waste your time until you know that you have a signed contract. That's one of probably the second hugest takeaway I want you to have from this is do not do your research beforehand. Do your research on the phone and after a contract. One thing that I do exactly like Daniel is when he gets the call, it's after this stage. So let me get back into the stages, and then I'll dive into that next. So we've got our initial discovery stage. We're setting the stage, giving them the ability to have power in that conversation. One great thing that I did take away from, I think you guys know I've got mixed feelings on Never Split the Difference, but I think a majority of it's really good. As I've come to think about it, I've taken away some really good nuggets from that. Some of it I think is outdated and doesn't work, but I think the things that do work are really good. One of those is the power of no, letting them say no. The example they use is when a telemarketer calls and they're like, hey, how would you like to buy, or how would you like to save $600 on your, electric bill? Like, they want you to say yes. And it feels so good to be like, no, I wouldn't like to save it. Bah! So no is very empowering. Anybody that has a 2-year-old understands how empowering no is. Daniel, you've lived the no life with your little girl, maybe little girls. What is Zyla talking yet? How old is she?
Oh yeah. I've already dealt with it 19 times this morning. I get no all day long.
No is empowering. As a human being. So give your seller the ability to say no. I think one of the great ways to do that is an opening question of, did I catch you at a bad time? Rather than saying, do you have a minute to talk, say, did I catch you at a bad time? Because then they say no, and now they understand that no is on the table, and subconsciously they feel more in control as well, right?
I don't like that question.
So the next stage we do is we ask, go ahead.
I don't like that question. I've never liked asking that question up front, because it always, if I'm doing a cold call, I never like asking that question up front, because I'm almost always giving them an out right out the bat. I try not to ask that. I personally try not to ask that question.
Yes. No, I think that that's an extremely good distinction here to make. Our system, we don't cold call. Our system is built on outgoing marketing, an inbound call that comes to an initial phone person, and then our outbound call back to the seller. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about here. Is once your seller has reached out with interest, saying, hey, I am interested in selling my house to you because of this marketing that you got. That's what this is based on. You're absolutely right. I would not ask that on a cold call, because it's almost always going to be at a bad time with a cold call. So good distinction there. Oops. That's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. So then we start asking about property condition, right? All the stuff so here's the things that you don't need to ask about. You don't need to ask about square footage, because A, they probably don't know, and B, just go freaking find it on on Google, right? So open-ended questions are great. Can you tell me a little bit about the property? What would you say the general condition is? Are there any major or minor repairs that you've mentioned that still need to be done? How long have you owned the property is good, right? Because if you are going to take it sub 2, that lets you know how far into the loan they are. Is anybody in the property right now? You've got to figure out if it's vacant or not. How many bedrooms and bathrooms? I still want you to ask this, even though you can find it on Google, because so often a very large portion of houses that I've bought have more bedrooms than is on tax, right? It's really a 4-bedroom because they converted something, and so asking that's a good question. The other thing that I want, that I really like is, has the kitchen or bathroom been updated in the last 3 years, okay? Because if they are, you're talking about the house being livable versus what money is going to need to go into the repairs of this property. And so if you're setting the stage of, hey, has the bathroom or kitchen been updated in the last 3 years? What you're telling them subconsciously is, if you tell me no to this answer, I'm probably going to have to budget in a repair cost for this, for these items, even though you may not necessarily qualify it as a needed thing. What I'm saying is, if it hasn't happened in the last 3 years, it's going to need to happen. And it's a subtle way of telling them this and helping them to accept that when you talk about budgeting in updates, that they understand why, because to you, an update means it hasn't been done in the last 3 years. So once we've moved out of motivation, we move into, moved out of the property condition, we move into our motivation. We want to figure out what timeline they're trying to get things sold in, if they have a timeline in front of us. I also like saying, would you like to do so, if you do decide to sell to us or anyone else, would you like to do so in 30, 90, or 30 days, 90 days, or sometime further out? Now, I want to point something out here. This is actually not even exactly how I do my calls. Again, this is a script that we use for our staff because we know that everybody's going to buy houses differently from each other. I rely very heavily on my calls. I come from a place of authority. I come from a place of like, look, I know how things are going down and you're going to work with me. But that can be very difficult to come off the right way with. And I just happen to, that's my style. I'm a very authoritative dude. But I offer it with like a spoonful of sugar and like, and I know that this is such a douchey way of like explaining myself, but I want you, I think anybody explaining themselves, like you must probably need to feel douchey, but like you need to know how you work, right? I rely on, I'm going to be authoritative and straight to the point, but my spoonful of sugar to offset that is charm. I'm going to make jokes. I'm going to make them like me. I'm really good at rapport. They understand that I'm being honest. They understand that I'm being serious. I feel like I have an ability to come across that when I speak, people understand that I'm telling the truth. And therefore, I'm able to give these hard truths. And they're kind of okay with that because I'm still personable. I'm still able to talk to them and build that rapport. But that's something that I have that not everybody else has. Some people out there are going to buy houses just like me. Others are not, right? So when we've built this script, what we're doing here, again, my operation is ramping to do 1,000 houses by 2023. So when we're building scripts, when we're building SOPs, our goal is to make this to where we can bring basically anybody in, train them up in our system, and get them running, right? John, who is now our sales manager, came in as an acquisitions guy because of the systems that we had built, because of using CCFX, our CRM the way that it is, and because of Ronnie's marketing prowess and our operational knowledge. In his first 14 days, I want to say it was his first 14 days, he had bought 10 houses with us as a guy who had only done 2 houses previously before over his entire career of years and years and years. So we had to figure out how can we apply what we know to something that most people can be successful with? And that's where something like this comes into play. Now, what we're giving you here on these phases of these calls is a framework for you to go out and say, this is a good framework for me because I know that this framework works, but I'm going to adjust certain things to work more for me. Now, all of that diatribe to say, the reason I bring that up is this says, if you do decide to sell to us or anyone else, would you like to do so within 30, 90, or sometime further out? So I'm going to break that into just 2 parts. If you do, I don't ever do if you do, right? Grant personally is when you do this, when you sell to me, blah, blah, blah. But Ronnie buys houses totally different than me. And Ronnie is a stinking genius he ends up, the seller's like selling why we should buy the house, right? So he's really good at, and you can see his footprints in this script with the like, little bit of a takeaway of it's all up to you. Let me just answer your questions. Let me see what you want. We're going to be here. He takes it, again, it's a consultative sales approach. It's all up to you. You lead it, but really like he's controlling this, he's steering them as they lead it. That's not how I would do this. I would say, so look, I'm interested. I like your property. I'm going to be ready to move on this. When are you trying to get out? Do you want to sell this in the next 30 days, in the next 90 days, or sometime further out? Right. So see, I have changed this framework into my sales status, my sales strategy. And I think you guys need to be careful and aware of, hey, are you a head, heart, gut? Hey, are you really good at being super authoritative and definitive? Or are you more of a, let me lead from behind? Or are you more of a quiet, thoughtful type? What you find your thing and kind of shift these phases. But I really like 30, 90, or sometime further out, because what do you think these guys have dealt with outside of you? They get postcards. Let's say they've got 13 postcards and they've called 3 of them. Daniel, what do you think? Tell me about the person that is most likely on the other side of that phone when they call that postcard. Tell me who you think that person most likely is.
That person is most likely somebody looking to sell their house because you sent some marketing to them.
No, I'm sorry. Reverse the role. So the seller is calling on these postcards, right? So who do you think the seller has interacted with? Say that you're the 3rd phone call that they've made, because they got 25 postcards. They called 1 postcard, they called 2 postcard, they called your postcard. Who do you think the investors were on these first 2 postcards? What impression did the seller get from them?
Let me give the first piece of advice that I would recommend in this particular scenario, and that is answer your phone. Because I have dealt with way too many times where you will call a postcard, no one answers the phone call. That's a bad position for your company to be in. But with that taken into consideration, if you're like the 2nd or 3rd person they've called, I have dealt with a lot of extremely pushy people on the phone. They're just flat out rude. They're like, give me an address. How much do you want for it? And they're very rude about that entire transaction. I have personally found that to be off-putting for sellers. And when you approach a seller with a mild level of rapport and respect, that you get a lot further with them than I've seen other people. I've flat out had sellers call me up and be like, man, I just got off the phone with another seller and I'll never talk to them again. They're rude. They're just a lot of times, and I've seen other people that are even doing national sales training on this stuff. They're just extremely rude on the phone. That's me personally.
Yep. And the likelihood is they got some postcard that says, I'll close in 7 days and I'll get you fast cash quick. And you come off looking like a pawn shop, right? Well, we don't want to be a pawn shop in our operation. We are a premium outfit. Now, we're going to give great offers. We're going to give the best offers, and we're going to have the best experience. We're a premium outfit. So when I say, hey, when do you want to close? Do you want to close in 30 days or 90 days or sometime further out? It's a different impression than probably those first 2 people that are like, I can get cash in your pocket next week. I can get you cash in 3 days. I can get you closed in 7 days. And all it takes is, because people feel that as pawn shop. And if they're not in a pawn shop situation, when they talk to somebody who's like, yeah, we got all this. We've asked questions super confidently. We've set the stage. We've let you know exactly what our process looks like. This is how it is to work with Grant. So when are you trying to close? Are you trying to close in a month or 90 days or sometime further out? We're also separating ourselves from all these other people. And they're like, okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here. The first 2 people I talked to didn't really have their crap together on an order of call. They're begging me to sell them this house in the next 5 days and getting cash in my pocket, which means a bigger discount. And over here, this person's setting the stage. They're walking me through the process, and they're not even trying to push me to go further, right? It separates you. And that's one of the things that you need to do. So through that separation, you talk into the timelines, the equity, the home value, dive deeper into their motivations, asking them really to consider that. And that moves you into the second stage, which is, look, I need to pause here. My 5 minutes is up. But in order to finish putting together the particulars of this offer for you and then, calculating it down to the penny, I'm going to need about 15 to 20 more minutes of your time. So here's the options. You can tell me what you want to do. We can either stop here if you no longer have any interest because of something that we've said here, or we can go set up another call when you will have 15 or 20 minutes to finish this out. Or I can set aside another 15 or 20 minutes right now. I'll move some of my other stuff around so that we can finish up with you right now. What would you like to do? Most of the time, they're going to want to set aside another 15 to 20 minutes, but you've given them the control, right? Again, we always want them to feel in control because they are out of control of so many areas of their life. We need them to understand that by working with you, you're a premium outfit, that they have control over how it's going. But you, again, understand how to steer those conversations, giving them the control, but leading them down a path that's going to work for both of you. So we've set that stage. let's say either way, whatever happens, if you have to call back or if you're doing it right then we're moving into the deal killers, right? Figuring out what are the actual deal killers. The numbers are actually the easiest part about this. Even when we come to an offer you're 100% happy with and you're ready to sell, there's a few things that sometimes get in the way. Is it okay if we talk about those things for a minute? So we can structure the deal in a specific way that can work for you, right? So then you start talking about their risks and discomfort. Did you say something, Daniel?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, I thought I heard you. And so we start talking about the logistics. When's the soonest you might be able to move? What's the maximum amount of time it might take you? Would anything at all be difficult to move into or getting you a new place? If we decide to move forward, what would be your biggest worry about all of this? Guys, we've talked about previously, Daniel and I have another piece of Never Split the Difference, which is the accusation audit. This is accusation audit stuff right here, right? We're letting them fill in the problems that they may have by asking the questions that we know they may have in the background so that we can get that out and ahead of time. Have you considered renting out the property? Have you considered doing any other updates and listing it with a realtor? Is keeping the property even an option for you, right? They're reinforcing over and over and over again that you are their option. Now, we're learning that from them, but we're also having them teach that to themselves, right? So, that is where we get into, again, the risks and discomforts. What are their other options? What are the decision makers that go into this, right? If you decided to sell to me or anybody else, would anybody be upset that you didn't at least run it by them before making that decision? I really like that one. That's not my question. I really like that one because I've talked about this before, how important it is for you to make sure that all the decision makers are there and present. Like if you go on the appointment so you can get the contract. But again, it's not even just who's on title. It's phrased better this way. Would anybody be upset that you didn't at least run it by them before making that decision? And if yes, well, what do you think that they would say and why, right? If they recommended you to sell, why would they? So now we start putting this seller to think about that person's impression of what it was and having them kind of commit to some of that, right? A really good way of transitioning and understanding who that person is. So now I'm going to reiterate everything that you've learned during your discovery portions of stage 1 and stage 2. You're going to label their emotions. You're going to rephrase. Let me just make sure that I'm rephrasing what I heard you say. You tell me if I got it right or wrong, right? And you tell it back to them because that emotionally lets them know that they have been heard. You're not just some fast-talking salesman who's asking questions for the formality. You're rephrasing things to them, even with the same exact words that they used. They feel heard. And then you can dive into your presentation, right? And so that's where we outline it. Here's how we'd like to structure things. We're going to tell them about our time frame, what the clean out period, what moving assistance we might be able to offer them. If there's a cash advance we could offer them, are there existing tenants? How do we handle that? Are we buying it as is? That kind of stuff. Like going through, this is how this is going to work from our end, just so you know what's happening here. Then you address if they did have discomfort and things that got brought to light a second ago. And then you go into your negotiation phase. Now, I do recommend go to propelio.com/academy. I have a negotiations quick tips series up there that hits through. It's like 50 2-minute videos on little tips to help you get that negotiation period done right. After that negotiation happens, it's a matter of getting it under contract, and you're setting the stage, and then you're transitioning into exactly what I said earlier about doing the digital signature side of things, right? Okay, we've negotiated a good price. It's going to take me a few minutes to actually get this contract fully put together. When are you going to be near a computer, right? And then you go into what I was talking about earlier when we skipped this whole setting the stage 2 through negotiations. When somebody said they were willing to sell for what they owe, we went straight to the contract. But they weren't willing to sell for what they owe. We did more stage setting, more motivational fact finding, more outlining of what our process looked like, and then we negotiated the deal, and then we introduced the signature of the contract, and we go down that same path that we were going down before. And we have had great results with that. Right now, we are seeing a signed contract for every $700 worth of closing, and we are seeing a closed deal, of marketing, and we're seeing a closed deal for every $1,850 or $1,875 in marketing, which are phenomenal numbers nationwide, by the way. I mean, most people are hitting in the low fives. A lot of people are able to get it down into the low to mid $2,000s. $2,500 worth of marketing gets you a closing. For the solopreneurs, once you have an operation, that typically pushes up to about $3,500. and we're down below 2,000 right now because we're using these kinds of stage setting things. We're using, I'm sure you guys saw a lot of similarities of like questions and motivation that both Daniel and I are trying to get out. And this gives you two different views of two high performing, large closing rate folks and how we get to yes on this kind of stuff. So I hope that you guys enjoy that. Decalon Fields asks, is the script in the CCF docs? It is not in the CCF docs. However, it is. I'm releasing a cat from the bag there, but it is going to be part of our release on this next mastermind, which is actually next week. It's next Friday. So if you guys have been thinking about joining a mastermind and getting some paid proximity and getting around some high performers, some big people that are doing big things. I mean, we've got folks in there that have owned mortgage companies with 175 RMLOs underneath them and lead generation companies that they were able to sell. These companies. We got one person in there owns 17 H&R Blocks. Somebody else in there owns a couple of online sales companies that net them, 7 figures a year. Like we've got some high players, and our niche is folks who want to get into creative financing and have done fewer than 15 deals. Everyone in there when they started had done fewer than 15 deals. But like nowadays, like Josh Dees is one of our guys. Josh has told me in this last like 2 months, he's netted 50 grand on 2 separate deals, and he's running like 10 to 14 deals at a time. And he's just been a member of ours for like 2 or 3 quarters at this point in time. So we've got some really high performers in this group. We got some really good people. If you're interested in getting into a mastermind and being around that, this next mastermind on next Friday, the 10th and 11th, it's going to be through Zoom because COVID-19 is crazy right now. But we're going to be talking about like what is the blueprint step by step that you would take from hey, I've decided I want to get into creative financing and getting your first deals closed within your first quarter. We're going to walk through, like we're going to give people what your calendar needs to look like every week and every day. We're giving people our entire we are giving people documentation, this script being one of those that will be in there, but it is only going to be for the accelerators and the executives that are present at this mastermind this weekend. So if you're interested in that, check out creativecashflow.com. I can take in 2 more people for this mastermind. We've got time slots for 2 more people. My calendar's actually blocked off for this next 2 weeks. So if you tried to do the apply now, it's not going to show you that I'm available for it. Hit the chat button that's on the bottom right, and Ika is there and available. Let her know that you're interested in interviewing for a spot at the mastermind and which level you would like to be interviewing for, and give her an email and stuff, and I'll reach out to you and we'll get that planned out so that you can get in for that. So sorry to divert us there, but that question did remind me of all of that. But that's it. That's how I view a call. That's what I think a successful call looks like in those stages. I think that there's a lot of definitiveness. I think there's a lot of setting the stage. I think there's a lot of giving control to your seller, but steering that control in a direction that you know is going to make sense for both of you. And that is what we have been seeing success in our operation with taking deals down. Daniel, what would you like to pull out, if anything, from here?
I mean, overall, I've enjoyed the entire conversation. There's things that you definitely do different than I, and one of the key things that I do enjoy about watching your show is the simple fact of there's always something that you say that I can pull away and add on to my little tool belt. The biggest one that I pulled away from that one today is just the way you broke down the DocuSign contract, the way you broke down getting those people to get through the yes on the contract. But all that to be said, this hour was full of a massive amount of information. I appreciate everybody that was watching. Are you ready to land this plane? Is that where we're headed?
Yeah, I'm ready to land. So again, guys, this doesn't happen without Propelio. Propelio's put a lot of effort, and Daniel's put a lot of effort into making sure that there's a community here for you to learn from real players that are actually doing it, that have been vetted, that actually have HUDs to point to. I've been on over 1,500 HUDs, and like I said, we're scaling to 1,000 houses a year by 2023. We are doing the business right now, and I'm willing to tell you where I suck. And right now, I'll tell you straight up, like we're sloppy in a lot of our stuff because we're doing a kind of a new model with this remote stuff and the volume that we're doing. But we're fixing it, and that's part of owning the business. You know what I mean? And so you need to be around people that are willing to tell you where they suck, willing to tell you where they're awesome, and so you can trust both sides of that. And Daniel's done a really good job of putting that stuff in front of you guys with these shows. So reward that, check it out. And I say reward it as though, but like Propelio, guys, it's seriously like that is a underpriced, undervalued piece of software with tons of leads, tons of website, get your own domain name, get your own CRM built in there. It's just, you've got every tool, comps, national comps, MLS comps, like true actual MLS comps. every tool that you need to get going is in Propelio. It's super underpriced. I mean, I save hundreds of dollars over what I was having to spend previously on all these different services. So really go check out Propelio.com. If you're not already a member, they do have a free trial. Daniel, what if, and maybe I shouldn't ask this here, but what if somebody had done a free trial before, like some of the new services were available? Has that been kind of reset at all, or is there a way for them to get back in and try some of these new services?
Most definitely. When they sign back up, what's going to happen is that the system's going to try and prompt them to immediately upgrade without a trial, because the system will see that they've had a previous trial with that email. If they do get that experience, just send in a message to support and say, hey, I tried y'all out before. Can I get another trial now that y'all have updated? My customer support staff will gladly give you another 2 weeks to try out the product, see how it works. You don't have to have a credit card for the trial. It's a 14-day trial. During that trial, you don't have any limits. So go out there, take advantage of that while it's still available. We are making some changes to that soon, but all that taken into consideration. Yeah, Propelio.com, 100%. Go out there, check it out. I appreciate that site. Driving for Dollars mobile app, skip tracing, cold calling, skip tracing, direct mail, websites, domains, custom emails for your business, so that way you have a little more branded professionalism when you're dealing with sellers. All of that, MLS comps, nationwide lead lists, all of that's available to you. So I definitely go out there and try that out. If you've never tried it out before, you're absolutely nothing that's going to hurt for going out there and getting yourself a trial. So if you're using another software system and you want to see how it compares, feel free to go out and sign that up.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you guys being here. It means a lot to us that you're willing to take out time from your busy Wednesday mornings and come learn some stuff and get better. You know, that's what it's all about, is being in a community of people that are like-minded and ready to go. So again, if you like how I teach and you want to learn more, or if you've been considering doing a mastermind, by the way, the other thing I didn't even mention on the mastermind is, since we're doing a Zoom mastermind instead of an in-person mastermind, I'm actually extending everybody's membership by a full quarter, because I want people to be in person with each other. I think that there's nothing that replaces in community staring at somebody in the eyes, walking to the bathroom together, having lunch together, that kind of stuff. So anybody that signs up before this week, you're actually going to get a full extra quarter on your membership if you are an accelerator or an executive. But we do also have the Seller Financing Essentials, where I do a weekly Q&A every Monday night. Every question that you may have, we go live at 7 p.m. Central, and I just keep answering questions until they stop coming in. And it's an excellent time to learn. There are great questions that come in there. So check me out. creativecashflow.com/memberships is where you can see that. Again, guys, thank you guys for being here. If you ever have any suggestions of something that you'd want to hear from us to talk about, DM us, put it in the Propelio tools group as a suggestion for a topic. We'd love to address those types of things. And Daniel, that's it for me. I'll let you land the plane there.
Well, I appreciate it. I don't think I've got much more to add to that, other than, show some support. If y'all are out there, y'all like the content y'all are receiving, go out, check out Propelio.com, check out a trial over there. Go out there and check out creativecashflow.com, see what Grant's got going on over there. And as always, I appreciate everyone here in the community. Anything we can do to support you, drop some questions in here. Maybe we can touch that on next week's phone call. We do this every Wednesday live at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So if you had some good, positive experience here, share the love, teach everybody, show everybody where they can come and be a part of this content. So I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate Grant, as always, for being a heavy supporter of this community and going out there and answering the questions that y'all have. Say thank you to him. Thank you to Propelio. All of y'all, much love. Have a great day.